Hey guys, it's Maymay and welcome to Stamping Saturday, one of my favorite days of the week. I love to stamp and today we get to play around. Today we're going to make a gift. This is one of those cigar boxes from Plaid and I get these at my local Walmart. They're really inexpensive. I want to say they're less than $5 and they're pretty roomy. This one is 8 3/8 by 8 13 by 1 3/4 inch deep. So it's a big old box. See how big this is? And it can hold a lot of stuff. It can hold anything you want to wrap in it, or if you wanted to make a gift card set and put inside here like a stationery box, wouldn't that be super cute? Well, today we're going to stamp on it. Now, I have done this technique before on other projects where I stamp and also emboss onto wood, and I love to do that. Now, this wood is a raw wood, and I think when you stamp on raw wood, it is so pretty and it soaks in the ink really well and kind of locks it in, so I really like that. But today we're going to do a whole bunch of processes and I think this is going to be super fun for you to give away to friends or family. Now, I also picked up from Walmart this big A. I'm going to make this box for a friend whose name starts with A, and I thought this would be super neat to kind of put her initial on the top of this box. Now, I'm going to use this like a stencil. If you have a Cricut or Brother Scan and Cut or any machine at home where you can do this yourself, you can just cut this from your own machine. But I thought, since a lot of you guys don't have them, that we would do this today using the Walmart piece. And this was $1 at Walmart. It was in the paper crafting section by the stickers. Matter of fact, this is called a sticker. I should have spent more time showing you what this is, but it's called a sticker, and you'll find it back there in the paper crafting section. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to eyeball the center, because I just eyeball. I never measure, hardly ever, which one of these days I'm really gonna be sad that I didn't measure. I'm just gonna lay this down for a second. That looks good to me, and then I'm gonna press it into place. Now, I'm not leaving this on here. You could, but this is kind of a paper sticker and it might need a sealant if you were gonna leave it on here. We're just gonna let it protect the surface so that when we stamp, we can peel this off and have an A behind it. Okay, next thing, we're gonna use this beautiful big wood background stamp from Do Crafts. I love this stamp. I use it all the time and I'm so glad I have it. It's just one of my favorites. I'm also going to use Desert Sand ink, which is one of my dewdrops from Memento. Desert Sand is one of my favorites, and I'm going to ink this guy up. Now, I do not care if I miss some spots. I'm not trying to purposely, but if I do, it's not a big deal because I don't want this to be perfectly stamped. I'm looking for a distressed look. So I'm just inking this up. I don't have this on a block. I just left it on the little acetate sheet it comes on. And we're just gonna ink it up like that. So we're all inked up now. I'm gonna slide this here toward me. I'm gonna bring our box back over, make sure you guys can see what's happening. I'm gonna flip this stamp over and I'm going to lay it to one side. I just wanna make sure I cover the top and the bottom, and I'm going to press this into the wood. The cool thing is I have found from using inks before on wood that they really, when the wood is kind of raw like this one is, it really soaks up that ink. So we should get a really nice impression. And then I'm just going to lift it up. Can you see that? Let me bring that to the camera because I'm using a very pale ink on purpose. Isn't that pretty? I love how that looks. Now I just need to come over and do it on this side as well. Now I do not expect to line this up perfectly, but I'm going to get it as close as I can to that other edge. And if the wood overlaps or if the pattern overlaps, that will be fine. I'm just going to lay that into place and let that ink soak into the wood. And there we go. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? It looks like a little hardwood floor, doesn't it? Now you could totally wrap that around the edge and keep going. I'm not going to. I'm only going to decorate the top of this box. I just think it's really pretty. I say that now. I may decide to do it in later, but I'm also going to leave this piece on here, this letter, because two things. I'm going to be heat embossing, and if I peel this off now, it might leave a little stickiness and some of my embossing powder might stick where I don't want it to. And the second thing, I'm going to be adding some other stamps, and I might want to go around it so that A will really pop. Okay, so let me get some other stamps and we'll keep going. So now we've stamped the wood on the top. We've got our A sitting there, and I'm going to use my Brutus Monroe Alabaster white pigment ink and the embossing powder because I love those two together. You can use just Versamark ink, just a clear watermark ink, that's fine, but I love to use these two together. And I found the stamp set. I made a card a while back using this stamp set, which is called Sunflower Wishes. So I made a card like this, and that's kind of what inspired me to use this stamp set, because so many of you gave me compliments on that card and the way it turned out. And I thought if I could kind of mimic that in this, it would be kind of neat, I think. So we'll see how this turns out. I'm just putting all of the things I'm going to need onto blocks right now, so I won't even have to think about it. I can just stamp and go. Now, another cool thing about using the white ink is I'm going to be able to see exactly where I'm stamping. So I'm going to bring you guys in closer, and I've got my white pigment ink. And I'm going to ink up, I'm kind of off screen. Let me move this a little bit. So I'm going to ink up this flower with my white pigment ink. Get it nice and coated. And then I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to kind of just go around this A. I don't exactly know where I'm going to go with this. So I'm just kind of feeling around. I think I'll go right there first. I'm just going to stamp that down, just like so. And pigment ink dries slower, so I've got a little bit of time to work here. I'm going to stamp another one here. And then I think I'll take a leaf and stamp it around them. And I can kind of see what I'm doing, which is good, because it's the white ink. Try not to get your hand in it. I think that could happen pretty easily, probably. Then I'm going to take this flower center. I'm going to stamp it in the middle of this guy. I kind of like it. And then I'm going to take the smaller one and stamp it in the middle of the other one. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour on my alabaster embossing powder on there. Now here's the thing. I probably should have used some static cling, what is it called? Like an anti-static pad. So I've got that stamped on, and now I'm going to heat it with my heat tool. I'm going to let this heat up for a second before I go to it. So I've done that in that corner, which is really hard for you to see, but don't worry, we're going to be coloring this too, so it'll be really pretty. So I'm going to continue around this flower, around this A, because I want the flowers to be what make the A pop. So I'm going to keep doing exactly what I just did all the way around. Now, as usual, the first time I forgot to use my anti-static powder tool. This time I'm not going to forget. I'm going to coat all of this ink with the anti-static powder tool so I won't forget next time. It didn't make a mess or anything. You can't really tell it, but after I did it, I thought, oh, I should have coated it. So I'm going to. Now everything is embossed, and it's kind of hard to see, but you can see it like that. And just because we're using wood on here, I want to give you a caution real quick while I clean my work surface up. The wood can warp if you hold that heat too long in one spot, because it can, the heat can affect it. So be sure not to hold your heat tool in one spot too long. Keep moving it around until your embossing is done. Now I'm not going to remove this black just yet. I want to go in and lay some color in, and I'm going to use my Spectrum Noirs for this. And again, I'm going to do this a lot like I did that card that I did that day, except that I'm going to use more color, I think. So I'm going to lay in just some yellow. And this is where the flowers are going to start to pop, because all those petals that are outlined in white will now be yellow petals. It's going to be soft and subtle, but I think it's going to be pretty. Of course, you can change the colors if you want it to be much more vibrant, and if you really want it to be vibrant, think about doing your embossing with black or brown. That would be pretty too. Now, I don't know how you feel about coloring on wood with your Spectrum Noirs, I'm trying to go with the grain and not against the grain. That way I'm not getting so much resistance on the tip of the marker on the nib, so I'm not wearing out the nib. And you can also just pat the color and you don't have to rub it in at all. Can you see how the yellow is starting to pop? Isn't that pretty? Now I left this black A there so that I wouldn't have to stress about keeping my lines perfectly straight. I just left it there just like it was like a stencil or a template, and then it'll kind of mask off where I don't want to color. Now I'm taking a lighter green. This is not the darkest green I'm going to use. I'm going to lay in a first coat on these leaves in the lighter color green. I think that looks pretty. If your markers are real wet and they bleed a good bit, don't worry about it. It looks pretty on the wood. Kind of the bleed kind of looks kind of like painterly, kind of like watercolor. Mine only tend to do it where my embossing is kind of broken. It kind of sneaks out a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I think it looks pretty. So there's the first coat of green, and now I'm going to take a darker yellow, and from the center of the flower petals I'm going to kind of flick outward to give some dimension to those flowers. Just working the center with the darkest color. I'm not going to worry about blending because I feel like the wood is going to do that for me. So I'm just flicking some of that darker color. Can you see how it kind of gives it some life in the center? This is just what I did on that card that I shared with you guys, and I just thought it was beautiful. Now on the leaves, I'm going to take a darker green and do the same thing. Just kind of go from the center out, just to add some more color to our leaves. And on those, just because I don't really love how that is so stark, I'm going to come back and try to blend that in a little bit. Now I'm going to use a couple of browns in the middle of my flowers. I'm going to start here out at the outside edge. Just sort of bring that in a little bit, just kind of getting the roundest part of the flower. I like how it's kind of bleeding into the grain of the wood. That's kind of cool. Then here I am going to take a second shade, which is much, much lighter, and just bring that together. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my colorless blender, and anywhere where there is embossing, I'm going to color over that, but to remove the color that I dropped on with the markers, if that makes sense. Like these pieces here, I want more of the white to show where the embossing is, but I got over it with my marker, so I'm just sort of cleaning it off. It works great to do that. So if you get any marker on embossing that you don't want to be there, just wipe it off with your colorless blender. Okay, so we've got all the coloring done, and it's time to reveal the A underneath. So I'm going to peel this guy up. and I really, really love what it's left behind, but I don't think I see it as prominent as I wanted. So we're going to fix that. Now I know this is probably going to bleed a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about it. Again, I think the bleed was kind of pretty earlier, and I'm hoping I'll think it's pretty here too. I'm going to draw this A in with a very pale marker. Very pale color. See how that kind of just blended in there on the side? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to the top and do it here. Now I'm going to let this sit overnight and see how the alcohol does, see how the markers blend together, how they work, and I may come back in and do a little more color, and I might even decide to do something to the actual A. We'll see, but I'm going to let it sit overnight and we'll come back and check it out tomorrow. So it's the next morning and here's how it's ended, and I love the flowers, but I don't love the A as much, so I've got a plan to adjust that. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do to adjust this. I'm going to use some chalkboard paint. I really liked the way that black A looked as I was stamping those yellow letters. I thought it was, those flowers. I thought it was really popping. And I'm thinking if I go through and I paint this A in black, I'm going to get that same look. So this is how I do these things. I just kind of play, and if it works, it works. And you can adjust any way you see fit for your project. So even if you start out with one thing in mind and you end up doing something different, it's all right. It's your craft project. And that's the fun thing about having supplies in your stash that help you do that. So I'm just going to color the black right to the flower itself, like right where, literally where our sticker A was. Because I just think it looks so pretty. So I'm going to do that. I don't think I've ever shared a whole lot of tips for painting with you guys, but let me tell you, I'm a shaker. I shake a lot, so I have a hard time getting a perfectly straight line, but what I try to do is let the edge of the brush do that for me. I'm big on using these square brushes because I find I can get a really good edge. See, I'm just kind of dropping that in. I can find that I get a really good edge by doing that, and then coming back and kind of smoothing that out using the edge of that brush. That's how I get a nice straight edge, because I shake, so I let the brush do the work. So the paint you use is up to you. I'm using chalkboard because I want a matte finish. I'm not as concerned about it being chalkboard paint as much as I wanted the matte finish that I get from the chalkboard. I really like that. You could get the same matte from chalk paint, because you can get a matte finish in that. But I have this handy, and that's what I'm using. So I've zoomed you guys in really close so you can see this, and I think this is really pretty, and I'm going to let this dry and just be just like this. Now you could add anything else. You could paint on top of the A again if you wanted to. It might be cute if you added some white stitch lines around the edge of the A. I don't know if I'm going to do that. If I do, it'll be in pictures, but I'm not sure. I think I'm going to leave it just like this. I really like how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to bring it up real close because I want you to see how the flowers look. See how they have the little white embossing? This is not showing up well on camera, but it's so pretty in person because there's a little shimmer, little shine. It's so pretty. So just a little idea for a quick gift, and I will be sure to put the links to everything I used as far as the embossing and all that good stuff in the description below. And if you make one of these, guys, I want to see it. Head over to my Facebook group called Maymay Made It, and so did I, and share with me what you're making. I love seeing what you guys are doing. Thanks so much for watching. Have a Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.